Well, Dan and Deyon, thank you both very much indeed for joining us on the programme. I guess it's almost feel like saying happy birthday to you both.
Thank you.
30 years of mercy ships. That's an incredible achievement. Whose idea was it?
Well, the idea really has four things that came together. First of all, a storm in 1964 when we were teenagers. I was 19, Deyon was 18. I'll save you the math. I just had my 63rd birthday. But a storm swept through and a teenage girl prayed a prayer that went something like, wouldn't it be wonderful if there were ships, or if God had a ship? I didn't pray the prayer, Deyon didn't, but we heard about it. And that really registered deeply. And secondly, that they all start with an S. It helps me remember. Was an actual ship. Second S is a ship, the good ship Hope, which was a hospital ship that fascinated us. Thirdly, we have 4 children, a daughter and 3 boys. The middle boy is a special needs son, John Paul. So John Paul, in learning to care for him, not to love him, because that comes automatically. He's 32, he still doesn't speak, he's not toilet trained, but he's a gift of God's grace. And in the Lord allowing us to have John Paul open our eyes to a greater world of need. And then the 4th S, in 1977, I spent 10 days in Calcutta and got to meet Mother Teresa. I mean, everyone would have wanted to spend time with her. And she put it all together for me. She said, John Paul is a gift from the Lord. He may never speak, but you pursue this dream of a hospital ship and thousands will hear of John Paul and his voice. So you put it all together. There are others who've been involved. The Billy Graham organization helped us early on. We kept the check from Ruth Graham. I mean, that's a memento that everyone would be proud of. And that's how we began 30 years ago.
This is a real family affair for both of you, isn't it? I
Yes.
mean, is it hard you work with him, you live with him? How do you cope with all that sort of pressure?
I made it a goal early on to keep the family a unit, and so I worked very hard, especially after we moved on board. We bought the ship and then moved, at the time having 3 children, packed our suitcases and went, and didn't really expect at that stage that we would live on board for 10 years. We went more temporarily in my mind, which was a good thing because it made it far less complicated. And we saw it as a wonderful adventure. And children typically, in our experience, love an adventure, and if mom and dad are fine, they're fine. It was a time when the children were an important part. I think they kept it very normal.
Yeah. Just tell us a little bit about what facilities there are.
Well, Alan, imagine with me for a moment, almost 500 feet in length, 80 feet in beam, 16,000 tons, state-of-the-art hospital equipment. So go to one of the best hospitals in New Zealand, and everything you have there you find in the hospital on the ship. And there are probably 20 to 30 different nationalities all working together, worshiping together. We say clearly that our model is the model of Jesus. The blind see, the mute speak, the lame leap for joy, the lepers are cleansed, and the good news is proclaimed. Well, take all of that, state-of-the-art hospital in the poorest, neediest ports of the world. We, on our new ship, which doubles the size, doubles the capacity of all of the other ships combined in the medical component alone, we can bring sight to the blind, 100 blind people per week. Our eye surgeons have the most we've ever been able to do in one day is 28 blind people in one day. Well, there's dancing as they go down the gangway, rejoicing. Families who had lost all hope have been given hope back. I think Deyon and I are very privileged because we get to see the results of the model that the Lord has led us to, and it's instantaneous. But then when you even look back at 30 years, a little child born with a cleft lip and would have been an outcast, or some would have considered it demon possession or worse. Now 14, 15, 20 years later, you see her as a young lady and educated and participating in society. There are tangible benefits that we get to see.
Is it hard to find the staff that would staff a hospital like that?
Surprisingly, no. I wouldn't use the hard. I would say it's a challenge. But thankfully, we have qualified professionals from all over the world who not only pay their own airfare, but we are unique in that we charge them for the privilege of volunteering. What that means is people are there because they really want to be there. They have a sense of calling, of purpose, and they know they're making a difference. So for a Kiwi, you got to fly literally to the far-flung corners of the earth, to Africa, and then we charge you $450 a month for doing that. Now that helps keep our overhead down, and it covers a big portion of the operating expense of a large ship, and I think it's a good business model.
It obviously works. For both of you working together on it, you have quite distinct roles, don't you, in terms of the organisation? You're in charge of training?
Yes, and over the years, as we've worked hard at improving our alignment and improving our structure for better accountability and better measurement, I think our roles have defined more precisely over the years. And I am in charge of the academy for the children, but it's in an overall sense. There's a young man who's working right now on the accrediting process of the academy. It's been around a long time, but we haven't been accredited. We've been licensed through our licensing state. So that's an important and vital part of Mercy Ships. I'm also responsible for our chaplains. And we have chaplains on the vessel and at our International Operations Center.
Did you think it would last 30 years? Did you ever dream that when you started this off it would go and go and go?
I don't think I ever thought 30 years, but I've always been, my DNA is I want long-term measurable results. I'm a firm believer in measurement, and if you can't measure it, there's no accountability. But I do want to be the first to say it's far more than we ever anticipated. We had no idea that the Lord will allow us to have the impact that He's enabled us over the last 30 years.
And maybe I could add that we haven't done it alone.
Yeah.
We had many capable, wonderful people early on and now that have made it so much greater than we could have ever seen come about had we been fewer in number.
So what about the future? What are your plans for the next 30 years?
We're actually working on 2 more ships. We have done the conceptual design for the next one. We'd like a Africa Mercy class flagship in the 3 major hemispheres of the world. So we definitely want one out here in Asia. The needs of Africa are significant enough that I think we could have 2 ships in Africa alone. If you look at the annually published Human Development Index, the lower 10%, in other words, those that live on less than $1 a day gross national product, have the lowest life expectancy, the highest infant mortality, the least availability of healthcare infrastructure. That's where we focused, and that's both in East and West Africa. Now, thanks to Tony Blair and Bono, the Irish rock star, and some others, Africa is no longer back page news. And if we look at China's model, China is in every one of the African nations engaged in the raw materials, because all of our futures are now interlinked with the continent of Africa. So I think Africa's day has come, and we are delighted to have been there and have some experience now since 1991.
Great. Well, our time's at an end, but thank you both so much for coming.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you,
It was
Alan.
lovely.